And it has been established and consistently proven that the most important factors for a person's mental health or health in general are their early childhood experiences, environment, and the bond with their caregivers. Could you elaborate on why and how are these things fundamental for one's health and development?
Sure. I think it's like, I'm going to say an analogy. If you're making pancakes, that's like saying the quality of your pancakes is going to depend on the ingredients you put into it and the way that it was cooked. So so for me, like a human being, okay, we start off with a genetic template for being human, but what forms us is our early childhood experiences. And that basically is the parents that we had. And because they form our early society, our early culture, and they form the ingredients that help give us the chance to become who we are. And so it's, I guess to me, it's just a given. It's like almost not even worth exploring or discussing because it's so, I guess at this point to me, it's just so completely obvious that our childhoods absolutely are the number one profound thing that affect who we are. And and I would go so far, even to go further, not just our childhoods, but our childhood relationship with our parents. And of course, other things play in, like the society we grow up in, our economic status, our race, the time period we grow up in, the food that we eat, our education. But really, it's primarily our parents, and everything else comes after that. But I don't know. I couldn't. I mean, yes. I mean, some people, of course, are profoundly affected by their genetics if they have some sort of genetic disorder or some other thing that affects their life. But I don't know what else it would be that so profoundly affects someone's life, even remotely as close to the effects of their childhood. I mean, yes, I know people who say their things happened in their adulthood that profoundly affected them, traumas or wonderful things that happened. But to me, all those things that happen in adulthood are still observed and experienced by us as individuals through the lens of our childhood experience.
And these facts are not new and they are well established. However, it's still hard for people, even in the 21st century, to accept it. People like Alice Miller, Lloyd Moss, and others have documented the consequences and history of childhood trauma in great detail.
Yeah.
Of course, we all were children once. Our mind and body remembers what we have experienced, and we see dysfunction all around us. So why do you think so many people are still in denial about their personal history, the mental state of the general society, and the long history of child abuse?
And I think it's just terribly painful to know the truth. I think there's so many excuses for why we can avoid it that it's just a horrendous, overwhelming pain, basically for everybody. I mean, I haven't shared this publicly, but I didn't even tell you, Darius. But I actually spent a day with Alice Miller's son in Switzerland a few months ago, month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago,
And
and
how was it?
it was really interesting. He he and I had a long conversation about his mom. I mean, he's coming out with her biography soon, but the basic point that he makes, and he's written about it, before, and he's been given interviews about it. But what was very interesting was that his mother was someone who understood the theory, pretty well, not perfectly, but pretty well understood the theory of, child abuse and the effect of childhood trauma on adults and how people pass that on. But what was pretty clear is that she really didn't get it for herself. She basically largely had not explored her own childhood and was not public about it, and really was very closed in, and still basically to the end of her life an extremely traumatized child living in an adult body. And this has been my thesis that I've written about her. But what was interesting is hearing it from her son, who was saying it from the perspective of having grown up with her as his parent, and also to have known her till the end of her life, and to know that this was someone. So even though she was one of the best people in the world to understand what it means about childhood trauma and the effects of it and the consequences of it, and even to some degree how to resolve it, even she. So when even she didn't get it for herself. She largely just didn't get it, and acted out her traumas and really was a victim of them for her whole life. She was actually, like her first book was sometimes subtitled or titled, She Was a Prisoner of Her Own Childhood. And so the reason I bring it back to, I saying that, I'm going to bring it back to your question, is how do people so profoundly in our world still deny it in the 21st century. And you said when people like Alice Miller and Lloyd Demouse have gone so far to explain this so publicly, it's like even one of those two people you mentioned herself didn't get it. So, so I think it makes it more understandable why the average person who doesn't even understand the theory can't get it. Because if they can't even get the theory, how can they apply it to themselves when one of the people who's created the theory doesn't even know how to apply it to themselves? So, so I think it's a tough challenge, and it's on a continuum. It's people can um, get their childhood problems and understand how to work through them to some degree, but it's like on a continuum. I think a lot of people get it to some degree, more and more nowadays, but then it's like how far do they go on the spectrum of really getting it and really working this stuff out?
Yeah.
And I'd say for me, it's like, I've never said, I mean, actually, early on, when I was 20, I thought, oh my God, I'm enlightened. I figured it out. I got it. And there was something profound that I'd gotten. I'd gotten some level of theory about something, but that as I've gotten older, I've become more humble to realize I'm only some of the way on this path and that I still have a lot more work yet to do. I've got a good grip on what's going on inside of me. I have a very strong understanding of the theory. It's just to apply it to oneself is a heck of a challenge. It's very difficult because it's so painful. There's so much grief involved. There's so much ancient loneliness and neediness that comes up, and also it's very hard to do it without a lot of peers, and it's in a lot of ways it's a lonely journey in this very troubled, traumatized, isolating, disturbed world.
Yeah, I can sympathize with a lot of things you've said.